Human Settlements Minister Lindiwe Sisulu has conceded that the country's housing strategy is not working. In fact, her department saying it's looking at alternative ways to give South Africans decent homes. Let's go straight to the spokesperson for the Department of Human Settlements, Yonela Diko. Good evening and thank you so much for your time tonight, Yonela. Firstly, let's talk about this overhaul that the minister was referencing yesterday. What exactly did she mean?
Look, the first problem with the current situation is that there's been a dichotomy between an increasing number of South Africans that have been housed formally by the department. You will know that we've provided 4.7 million houses that house over 18 million people, but contrasted that with an increasing number of people who are living in informal settlement. So the idea that you would have an increase in number of people who are living in formal settlements housed by the department, and at the same time an increase in the number of people who are living in formal settlements. So what that means is that, for example, according to the World Bank, 26% of the population, the rural population in South Africa, has moved into the urban areas. So you can imagine that the urban areas is typically 5-6 cities. So you've got a quarter of the population that has moved into the urban area. So if, for example, you look at Mpumalanga, you look at Limpopo, the people that are housed formally there are in the 90%, which means people are moving from living in formal settlements to coming closer to economic opportunities and becoming informal. So there is an urban urgent need of housing and land within the city. So what the minister therefore is implying is that the new strategy now that she wants to implement is to say, in as much as we've provided all these houses that are housing so many people, there is a shift where people are moving from being formally housed in rural areas to being informally housed in urban areas. So there's a need for land, there's a need for different categories of houses, as people now are no longer absolute poor. There are people who are earning between 1.5 and 15,000, people who are earning between 3.5 and 22,000. All those categories are going to be accommodated.
So when then you talk about the new strategy, which I imagine still needs to be fleshed out, what happens to the policy direction that you've been on? Because for all intents and purposes, that in itself has not yet been fully implemented. In fact, there remain great gaps between what the department had sought out to do versus what it has actually accomplished.
Well, I think the policy documents, we've always understood them as living documents that will continuously be informed by experience. And as you will know that now, for example, we have a new category which is called first-time home buyers, which is sort of your first generation people from families which has graduated, they need capital to buy homes. They may not want the RDP house, which is the house that is available for a black child, might be poor. They might want a particular apartment, a particular house in a certain suburb, but they need a certain capital seed that needs to be provided. So I think the policy is still the same, that according to Section 26 and Section 25, 26, which says that we need, government has a responsibility to ensure that people are adequately housed, and of course, Section 25, that people own that property. That's still the ultimate goal. But now it's informed by experience of challenges, experience of the changing dynamics and demographics and socio-economic conditions of people and where they would like to be placed. So that's what informs the new approach.
What happens then to those who still find themselves stuck on that initial waiting list? And I'll put that in inverted commas because we've just come out of an interview which says it doesn't necessarily exist. So there isn't necessarily a database that you can log onto somewhere where you'll find all the names of people who are still waiting for a house. But what happens to the communities that we know have been waiting?
Yeah, so this is the situation. We've got the current backlog is 2.8 million. So this is predominantly a backlog. For example, you've got Johannesburg, that's over 1 million. You've got City of Cape Town, that's 600,000. So it's highly concentrated. As I said, that people who had been provided houses out in the rural areas, those people in Limpopo are 90% housed and so on. So the issue now that the minister has been trying to do is to say, in the urban areas, the City of Joburg, the City of Cape Town, both province and city must have this consolidated list that whenever someone takes their ID and put it on the system, they're able to say, okay, I'm number 600. So there has been 5 projects that have been built. The combined number of those projects is 200 names. So that's 200 names down, but I'm coming along. The biggest trick has been that, or the biggest problem is that people know they're on the list, they know they've been approved, but they don't know of which projects, of the projects that are happening, that their names will be in. So that, I think, is one issue that the minister has been raising with municipalities and provinces. Have a consolidated list. People must know what's their number in the list, and of the projects that are being built, which of the houses that they'll be allocated.
It'll ultimately all come down to administration, and yet that's where we know that local municipalities have failed the greatest, because they've given houses to people who were not on those original lists. They've sold houses, and they've not built houses in some instances where they said they have, due to the corruption that has also often clouded some of these projects.
And I suppose this is what has really incensed all of us. For example, I think something came up in Clayville, Tembisa, where the portfolio committee in the Gauteng legislature found out that there are cops, there are people who work in government who have actually allocated themselves RDP houses. It really explains this fundamental issue where by now we should have actually fully housed everyone. If you've provided 4.7 million houses, housing 18 million people, by now you should have solved the problem of housing. But where it points us is to say you've got people who don't qualify, who are earning enough to buy their own houses or to move into different categories because they are in the inside of the system. Government officials, government people, they are able to manipulate the system. So that speaks to a need for either a collaboration with law enforcement, a review of our systems, and punitive measures that can be placed so that those people can really face the harshest form of the law. Because really, to give yourself a house and you can afford to buy one, and let someone who is homeless or inadequately housed to linger around, it's criminal, it's cruel. So I think those are some of the areas that have really incensed the minister and the department, that we do need to firm up in those areas, but we need collaboration with law enforcement and to firm up our policies and oversights so that we don't have a situation where we continue providing houses and there are people who don't deserve those houses to misdirect them and help themselves and their friends.
While the intention behind it might be good, of course, again, it'll all come down to administration, and these seems to be the very beginning stages of this conversation. So for South Africans who are sitting at home asking themselves, well, what does this mean for me? Because maybe I was hoping to get my house at the end of the year or at the beginning of next year. Does that mean that I'm effectively going to wait 5 more years for the system to become more centralized, for there to be, I suppose, a clear way forward from here on?
Yeah, no, that is true. I think if we say the current backlog is 2.8 million, it literally implies that there is going to be some wait, because the priority, of course, is the people who've been in the list since the 90s, old women, disabled people, and certain vulnerable groups. So, for example, the houses we gave and the title deeds we gave at the weekend, you had people who were 90 years old, 80 years old, who had been waiting for such a long time. It's a sad reality, but what it does, it tells us that because of this shift of people who move from being housed to being informal, there is that chance of people finding themselves in these gaps where they are informally housed, where they are inadequately housed, despite the efforts that the department has put. So having that consolidated list will help us at least to first synchronize it according to date, synchronize it according to vulnerable groups, so that, and then people can have confidence that the next project that comes up in Savannah City, Cosmos City, my name is there, then it's coming up. We need some transparency in that process.